Yep, that's me. You're probably wondering how I ended up in this situation.
With Tesla's full self-driving still out of reach, I decided to shift focus to the systems we do have access to. That brought me to Autopark, a feature we thought we already understood, but whose real limits are rarely pushed beyond a simple parking spot. I wanted to ask a more difficult question. In a complex situation, what does the system prioritize? How close is it to fully understanding its environment? And most importantly, under what circumstances could it actually harm a human? Before we go any further, let's be absolutely clear. What you're about to see is a controlled experiment I designed to find the system's limits. Autopark, just like FSD, is just a driving assistance system, which Tesla makes super clear, and whatever happens in the clips you're about to witness, it's always the driver and me who are fully responsible. My goal is not to create a fail video. It's to provide a scientific insight into how these systems operate, so you can make your own judgment about when and how to use them. To calibrate this brand new Tesla Model Y Performance 2026 Juniper model for the purpose of this test, we have to first do a few control runs in standard conditions. A completely regular, easy parking spot where the only challenge is one car being closer to the line than the other. But even this easy test reveals some interesting points. As always, Tesla Autopark needs to reverse in because unlike the new full self-driving 14, it's still based on human-written code and therefore isn't as flexible as an end-to-end AI solution. And it isn't as elegant either, wobbling around on its way to a spot that FSD could easily one-shot nowadays. On the other hand, it is flexible enough to prioritize placing itself approximately equal distance away from both cars instead of parking like a robot in the middle of the parking spot itself. This is obviously the optimal placement in case both of us would want to get out of the car, but let's try something else first before we do that. The exact same spot, but this time we'll approach it from the other side to see if we can replicate a consistent result. Consistency is something that hasn't really been a strength of Autopark in our previous tests, and I think it's because this feature still lies in that uncanny valley where it isn't quite human enough to be as confident and flexible as it needs to, but it's also not robotic enough anymore to precisely replicate what it did last time using some set of heuristic instructions. You can see that playing out right now. Autopark gets much closer to the car on our left, and even though it finishes some 3 seconds faster than before, the driver would have a hard time climbing out of the car this time. And that's why it is me who has to get out of the car, so we can finally start with our human experiments. The first one aims to position the humanoid in a way that doesn't directly block the parking spot, but makes it much trickier to get in and forces the car to drive pretty close to a stationary obstacle made of meat. And we're getting amazing data right from the start. The screen shows both a human model in front of the car, but also an occupancy network blob, which don't always agree with one another regarding their position. This reminds us again that these visuals are far from depicting everything the car takes into account, at least with FSD. The car decides to go around me when I'm not moving away and leaves a nice safety margin between itself and my body. It was quite surprising for us that it was willing to even go for this challenge, because in our previous videos, Autopark seemed much more paranoid around pedestrians, and when it detected any kind of human shenanigans around, it usually just stopped until they moved away into safety. This maneuver right here made us believe that we could push it much further this time. And not because of these paid actors casually strolling around to make it even harder. No, this moment is where it gets really interesting. Autopark sees no issue with me standing in its de facto blind spot while it's reversing, but still takes the obstacle into account when deciding on how far right it can turn its wheels, which it very much needs to do right now. I estimated that it always left me some 30 centimeters of breathing room, which is a measurement you better remember, because this is not the last time I'm going to mention it today. This is where it completely refuses to go until I move and give it more space, which is honestly fascinating because it has plenty of space to go around right now and is being much more cautious than when it was driving around me just a few seconds ago. This imaginary internal safety distance increases dramatically when I'm standing directly in front of the car, or more precisely, when the car knows it needs to drive towards me. Now we know that Autopark only pauses if it sees an obstacle it can't drive around, and also when it's clear that there's a human directly in its path. But what if we modify the human shape and put it closer to the ground so the cameras have a harder time detecting it? This time, I'm sitting a bit closer to the parking spot, leaving very little space for the car to go through. That makes it super tricky for the driver to even choose the parking spot. He has to put me in sort of a blind spot first, and even then we get an abort on the first try. As you can see, it's been really hard to push Autopark to actually do something dangerous so far. But what happens when we continue pushing? The car actually brushes past me, not quite a collision yet, but definitely less than an inch away. For safety reasons, I stand up, and in the same moment I appear on the side camera feed, the car detects a pedestrian and stops immediately. This probably confirms that Autopark is not using the new front bumper camera, which saw me perfectly right before it happened. The screen also depicted several pedestrians in my general direction shortly after, suggesting it might not be so sure about what it sees. With FSD, you can't judge the car's perception based on the screen visualization anymore. But here, with a code-based system, you can still see the binary heuristics coming through. It either flags me as a human or it doesn't, and there's nothing in between. So when I'm squatting, my body shape changes so much that the car mostly just sees me as an inanimate object, like a curb or some kind of stationary obstacle, which bypasses the pedestrian warning we get when it actually detects a human anywhere close like it did before. The car consistently approached within 30 centimeters of me, seeking the right trajectory. It still didn't recognize me as a human on screen, so no pedestrian warning triggered, and it continued its attempt. This behavior is unexpected, as Autopark previously disengaged much sooner. And this is where we find completely new behavior, as Autopark pauses and offers a resume button to the driver. But when he presses it, it instantly displays that familiar pedestrian warning and refuses to continue before I make another little sidestep to offer more real estate. The anxious Tesla quickly finishes its parking job in one smooth move, a bit too close on the left side again, but still inside the lines. So what if we remove them as the last predictable element and make the parking job even more chaotic? But before we do that, let me warm up a little bit inside the car, because the weather here is brutal, even more so than dodging semi-autonomous 2-ton robots. If you appreciate the scientific approach so far, give this video a quick like. And if you think we're risking too much, let us know in the comments, so we can recalibrate for next time. This next attempt asks two questions. First, can we confuse Autopark with rogue lines inside the predetermined parking spot? And second, was it really the squatting that disguised my human shape and made the car much less hesitant to approach me? The driver initiates Autopark before the space is blocked, and only after it starts parking, I step in to partially block it. I am not blocking it completely here. Instead, I'm trying to leave just enough space for the Model Y to squeeze through, exactly like I did last time, but we quickly realize it doesn't matter at all. I have to make several side steps and watch the extremely hesitant Tesla slowly approach me before I successfully convince it that there is in fact enough space to get around me. But once it decides it's going and places me in the blind spot again, it's like it completely forgets that I'm still a human and again gets as close as about 30 centimeters to me before it finishes the parking job. It looks like it's not getting confused by additional lines, but doesn't really have a strong sense of temporal memory or context window. At one moment, it stopped dead in its tracks because of a pedestrian warning, which seems more and more like an additional override layer above the controls, and the next second, it's confidently backing up right next to me while visualizing a tornado of pedestrians and motorcyclists. Let's tune up the chaos dial again, and instead of testing if Autopark is capable of harming others for a change, let's see if we can convince it to hurt itself and back into a parking spot on a collision course with not one, but two potentially dangerous objects. Notice that both of them are smaller than a 30cm cube, which we now know is the approximate threshold for what can fly under the radar of Tesla's occupancy network. It runs over the rag on the ground, but correctly visualizes the pole and its base and doesn't get too close to them. The ribbon, however, might have slipped through and didn't register the space as occupied. What does that mean? Basically, Autopark builds a 3D model of its surroundings from these 33cm cubes, which is quite a rough estimate for low-speed precision driving. Any object that doesn't register at least at that size might as well be invisible. So can we prove that? Let's set a trap for Autopark and move the pole so the ribbon goes across the parking spot. If our theory is correct, the car won't see it and should back itself up into the ribbon. Place your bets in the comments. Will we initiate contact, or can Autopark actually outsmart this challenge? As we approach, again, both poles are visualized as occupied space, but the ribbon, even though it is crystal clear across the entire length of the rear camera view, doesn't register at all. The car hits the ribbon, and just to be sure we don't take the whole thing down, the driver aborts Autopark. But I bet you completely missed the most interesting part of this. Let's watch the final moments again at 0.25x speed and pay close attention to the sequence of events. As we get close to the ribbon, the car first shifts the drive, but still continues rolling back for a few moments, which is when the collision happens. So technically, it wanted to change its direction in just the right moment, but didn't quite take the momentum fully into account. This Achilles heel of Autopark is going to come back again and again to haunt us big time. So far we've been playing games, but now it's time for some real-world testing. And what better way to escalate difficulty than switching a vast empty parking lot for claustrophobic residential parallel parking? You're gonna see the car approach this parking spot 2 times, and I want you to notice the difference. Try to focus not just on how fast it moves each time or how many maneuvers it takes before finishing, but also how it kinda chooses different styles of parking each time. This first attempt was just gruesome to watch, and frankly, one of the worst performances we ever got from Autopark. The space isn't even that small, as you love to point out in the comments. Most of you Italian drivers could probably fit both of your family cars in here.
Máte přední kameru, vidíte, že jedem k němu, furt mě to láká dupnout do brzdy, protože je to takový.
It's desperately trying to get closer to the curb while simultaneously being too scared to turn the wheels as much as it needs to. It is not, however, scared of getting too close to the car in front and makes our driver quite nervous, even though he can see the front camera feed at all times. As we already established, Autopark doesn't use that one yet, so it never really knows how close something is to its front bumper. Tesla also got rid of all ultrasonic sensors a while ago, which are traditionally used to accurately measure distance, and probably wouldn't allow Autopark to get this close. We might test this in our next Autopark video with an older Tesla, so if you're curious, definitely subscribe. For an unknown reason, Autopark considers the job done, even though it's just one more precise move far away from an actually optimal position. The back wheel is perfectly close to the curb, but the front is ridiculously far away. I really doubt we would get anywhere close this level of incompetence if Autopark was actually running FSD 14 or even 13 on the back end. From what I've seen so far, actually Smart Summon is the closest we can actually get to FSD functionality in Europe, but Autopark is a much lower level of intelligence. It is, however, at least in my opinion, still more intelligent and flexible than both standard and enhanced autopilot. But is it conscious enough to not run over this curious cat?
Kočko,
Thankfully, at least the feline's neural network is fully operational, and the front bumper camera gives us a peace of mind that it has in fact successfully escaped.
Ten pohled kočičí tam.
So let's go for round 2. It starts deparking much more like a human this time, fully aligning itself with the car in front and even going a little further. Of course, one of the critical pain points here is the fact that it has very little space on the other side of the road to position itself just right and do a wide sweep with its front wheels. Just like last time, it is hesitant to fully turn them, regardless of which side or direction it needs to. We can speculate on why that is, but the most likely reason, in my opinion, is the curb, and Autopark's tendency to not get too close to it, which has been one of the more consistent features of its behavior. Speaking of consistency, new videos come out every 2 weeks, so consider becoming a member for early access. Just click the join button down below. It feels like it's trying again and again each time instead of making visible progress, but after a while it rolls the dice just right and gets in a much better position than last time. And very much unlike last time, Autopark not only recognizes that it's close to victory, but also correctly straightens up the front and finishes not only faster, but also in an extremely impressive final position that would be passable even for a skilled human driver. Good job, Autopark. Oh, and here's the definitive proof that Schrödinger's cat is in fact alive. Give her a thumbs up for her bravery. 2 completely new wild challengers appear at our next destination, dynamically falling leaves and a speed bump, which our Tesla has to get over in order to finish this parking puzzle. It drives over the speed bump without issues. On one hand, a good thing. On the other, it's a potential precedent of being completely okay with driving over something. We'll see. Even going back over the speed bump doesn't change anything about Autopark's performance, and it just proceeds without even pausing. In one of our previous videos, we even tried to parallel park on a pretty steep hill, and that went surprisingly smoothly as well. It knows how to show confidence here and there, that's for sure.
Tady je to dobrý.
The biggest scare, however, is again the unaccounted momentum after shifting, which makes the Tesla go a little too far back at one point.
Teď bylo zvláštní, že přeřadila dopředu, ale ještě si popojila jako dozadu.
But the result is one of our best parallel parking jobs so far, and a much better performance than the previous spot, probably due to more space available on the left. So what happens when we finally combine both cursed challenges, parallel parking and the human intruder? This time, I'm slowly approaching the parking spot with little steps from behind, and even though I'm not interfering with the planned trajectory whatsoever, Autopark is overly cautious and stops until I walk away. Impressive.
Teď je vepředu chodec.
I relocate to the very edge of Autopark's planned final position, not making it impossible to get around me, just extremely difficult. And while it handles this with surprising grace, it lets us know it doesn't appreciate the bullying by doing the same shifting mistake as before and almost bumping into the car behind it.
Ty vole, jdi se podívat dozadu, kolik tam je?
It came this close, guys.
Let's look at it again at 0.25x speed. The car backs up swiftly, then shifts to drive, but continues rolling back for a few critical moments. And had the driver not slammed on the brake, this would have probably resulted in a collision. This is a perfect opportunity to remind you again that Autopark is a supervised assisting feature, and big kudos to the driver here for perfect supervision and intervention. But even though he is paying attention and has lightning fast reflexes, we probably shouldn't have come to this place. And I'll tell you why. This is about the smallest parallel parking space Autopark even detects, which is why it's an interesting test on its own. And truly, almost as if it gained knowledge while being abused by us previously, Autopark absolutely nails this spot. Still much slower than what FSD 14 would have probably done, but hey, that's software we aren't even allowed to dream about by our wise regulators. Before we proceed to our most interesting, but also most dangerous test, Let me remind you once again that I strongly advise against trying anything similar to this. And even we agreed that next time we will ask our friend Dan to provide some mannequins instead. After the Model Y successfully parked and still had some spare space, I decided to do my absolute best to confuse it. I wanted to test if the gear shifting momentum glitch we experienced before could go as far as to actually collide with something. As the Tesla approaches me, it visualizes me on the screen, but not as a pedestrian, not even as a separate object. No, instead I'm represented as an extension of the Suzuki I'm kneeling before. Okay, so Autopark sees me, but is it going to keep a safe distance? On the first pass, it gets extremely close, but correctly slows down before shifting, so the momentum doesn't make it go further this time. The second pass looks similar, maybe even a little better. It's definitely leaving more space for me this time. Great job so far. So what about the third pass? It bumps into me. A critical fault of the residual momentum problem we discovered previously. Autopark doesn't register the minor collision and finishes its attempt by getting dangerously close to the car in front as well. Okay, let's unpack this. We exploited not one or two, but 3 known weak points of Autopark here. Sitting down and facing away from the car bypasses the pedestrian detection layer. Then, leaning onto a much bigger object, the car in front of me, confuses Autopark's occupancy network and makes it miscalculate the actual boundary of unoccupied space, probably thinking it has some 30 centimeters of space more than it actually has. And finally, even though it technically changed directions before making contact, the momentum from rolling back manages to get it into a collision. But even this behavior wasn't fully consistent. When we tried to replicate it with the human body in front this time, Autopark was extremely hesitant about letting the driver pick the parking spot. Just look at the screen right now. It's there for just a second and then it isn't. And this probably depends entirely on what the occupancy network sees at the exact moment, because just like last time, my body is displayed only as an extension of the car before me when it's displayed at all. And precisely when it isn't showing up, that's when the parking offer appears instead. It's only when I leave the parking spot completely that the driver finally manages to initiate Autopark. So now we are bypassing not 3 security layers, but 4. The pedestrian detection, the occupancy network voxel size of 33 centimeters, the unintended residual momentum, and now its temporal coherence as well. To put it bluntly, I'm pretending to be a rock in front of a robot who can't distinguish small things that well and has a pretty bad memory. So, what do you think is going to happen? What's most disturbing to me at this moment is that I'm not being visualized on the screen whatsoever, despite being seen by not just one, but multiple cameras during this maneuver. I barely felt this first contact. Could have been less than a 2 kilogram push. Exactly the same mistake as before, momentum.
Ono to tam normálně rozmačka. Řvi a někdy brzdí, to mě nabouralo, ne? Žiješ ještě?
Jo.
No nic, já jsem tady přerušil, teď jsme drpli, ne?
After careful analysis, this last experiment yielded a different result than all previous runs in more ways than one. Like I said, multiple cameras saw me extremely clearly doing this Autopark, yet the visuals never displayed anything, unlike before when it looked like the car had a little tail. It almost seems as if this part of the 3D map froze in time, but I would absolutely love an official technical explanation from Tesla on this one. As we established, Autopark doesn't yet use the front bumper camera, which makes the collision absolutely clear. But what's probably the most disturbing news, and what I hope we'll never get to see a positive result on again, is the fact that in the end, the car, for the first time, just drove straight into me, not just using residual momentum like before, but with a lot more force. It didn't actually try to stop or reverse before the driver had already slammed on the brakes, as he should. Which leads me to the most important message of this video. I definitely think it's possible to solve all of these issues with just cameras. In fact, we proved that the problem isn't bad input data because the cameras saw me. The issue is the outdated software that Autopark still runs on. That said, it's pretty bad user experience to remove ultrasonic sensors and then offer automatic parking that has the potential of bumping into things. I really hope this is just a temporary issue and would like Autopark to be updated to FSD 14 on the back end. Most importantly, Tesla should upgrade their occupancy network to be able to detect objects smaller than 33 centimeters as soon as possible. And they might actually have solved the problem already with this fancy new technique that they published just a few weeks ago. So what do you think? Have I gone too far with my experiments, or should Tesla improve or perhaps limit their features in Europe even more? Let me tell you, the only thing more desperate than parking into myself was trying to get through morning rush hour traffic in Prague without Tesla full self-driving, because we still can't use that in Europe, only using a combination of basic and enhanced autopilot. If you want to see that and perhaps decide if these features are usable in European cities, you can watch this video in the middle of your screen right now.